the show that wildly recognizes, encourages, and invests in the radiance we all carry so you can shine your brightest. We're just a couple of curious people interested in friendship, ideas, and personal development. This is a show that strives to speak to the curious, to those who long to explore new ways of thinking, reflecting, and being. Through sharing our experiences, friendship, and interests, we hope to impact you to step more brightly into yourself, inch by inch.
Amy,
Hey, Tracy.
fancy seeing you here today.
I know. How are you doing?
I am feeling so accomplished. I know you know a little bit about my week, but for anybody who listened to Strengths, I think that lit a fire under my butt. Episode 21 of just admitting all my weaknesses I was falling prey to, and that I decided my strength of tenacity is enough to get the job done. So fingers crossed, next week I will be in a new location for anybody who watches on YouTube. But the floor is done. It's had the poly put on. The light's been installed. It's been painted. The doors are about to go back on. It's done.
That
it's
is
right.
amazing. And you should feel accomplished. I think that's wonderful. And I love it that your strength tenacity, which by the way is not one of the 34 Gallup strengths,
I'm sure
but we
just
just
make one of them.
Remember we decided to open up those 34 strengths to things that perhaps weren't on the list, right?
Well, how are you?
Yeah, I am surprisingly well. I shouldn't say surprisingly. It's not that surprising, but kind of, an afternoon on Fridays, sometimes you might feel a little tired or whatever, but I went for a walk this afternoon. Got to spend a little bit of time in nature and then came home and I meditated, and I'm no longer doing a guided meditation. I just listen to the binaural beats and then just sink into it for however long I do it. And I think I was meditating for I don't know, 30 minutes, 40 minutes.
Lost in the ether, man.
Oh, yeah. In those beats going from ear to ear, my right brain, left brain, right brain, left brain. And then I got up and then it was like, I can do anything. I feel amazing. So
you're glowing. You're just absolutely radiant.
Well, that's makeup, but thank you.
No. Energetically, your aura is not just out here, it's out there. You can tell you spent time in the cosmos.
Yeah, I did. Which, I think it's very interesting that I'm in this mood for today's show, which it's titled Happiness Warrior. And we're going to get into a lot of different things, but I did want to have a disclaimer right at the beginning. Tracy and I both just want anyone to know that, if you're going through anxiety, depression, any mental health issues, if you're going to therapy, if you're taking medication for anything, this is not a replacement for those things. This is more of an and, right? It's not a don't do those, do this. This is a do those and maybe try this.
And it's not a way of always being, right? Like you don't have to fake it. You don't have to put a mask on. If you're not feeling it, or if you're feeling that you need to turn it more inward, then that's what you do. Don't, as with anything we talk about on the show, take what resonates, but also don't do anything that's going to deplete you and take away from your wellness, right? Like we're brightly, we want you to be your brightest self. And so if this doesn't fit, it doesn't fit, but at least keep in mind for maybe a time in your life when it could fit in and feel good.
I mean, the last thing we'd want you to do is feel bad about not feeling good, right?
Yeah. And with something like Happiness Warrior, I absolutely love when we were talking about the show, it popped into my head. We're very action oriented with our verbiage here. So I practice aggressive friendship.
No, that's my favorite. It's my favorite thing. Here's the Happiness Warrior and here's the aggressive friendship.
And
I
so
love
it's one of
it.
those things where it's an action, right? And actions are behaviors and choices, and we can
Mhm.
choose to do or not do them. And yeah, like we were just saying, like just take what fits.
Yeah, I like that. Uh, a fairly long time ago, I wrote a blog post about just the topic happiness warrior because I decided to make that my sort of name, not name, my handle,
Handle.
whatever. And when I started the blog, the first paragraph was just talking about, I'm pretty sure that people, when they think of the word happy or they think of happy people, they don't necessarily see those people as courageous or strong, more like, oh, just fluff sort of thing. But I,
Flighty.
right, I think more than likely, a lot of happy people are happy because they understand how not to be crushed under the weight of
Mm.
fear and or adversity. Um, so the other thing I wrote about was this thing I'm just going to tell everyone and you about when I was in a training
So
for,
you were at work.
I
You were
was
in
at
work
work.
training. So
I
you're
was at
already in a
work.
persona kind of to
Yes,
begin with, right?
exactly. I'm
You're
at
work
work. I'm
Amy.
in a training, and the training was downtown. And so, like, I was raised by Joan Kennedy, who was like, you're going downtown, you got to dress for going downtown. So, I probably had on really nice slacks and boots and a jacket. And, I got my little downtown act together, right?
And you're
Um,
in an environment where for our workplace, we have like 9,000 people. So when we attend
mhm.
trainings, it's mixed events. And they ask
Yes,
you not to take them with the people you know from your department, your division, to
right.
you feel more comfortable being open or sharing things or
Yeah,
talking about hard topics. So
right.
you also know, or at least I do, because I was raised the same way. When I go downtown, and it's kind of the environment down there, I'm business casual in my office, but if I'm going next door, I'm putting on a suit jacket, right? And I
Right.
also recognize that when I attend anything, I'm representing my department, I'm representing my colleagues, my peers, and my boss. And so, I
Mhm.
show up as my authentic work self, but it's my best work self. And it's
Exactly,
the same.
Tracy. Yeah. So in this training, we were talking about adversity and how to continue to be leaders, even if something's going on like stressful in your life. And I remember reacting to that. And the woman next to me turned and said, what do you have to be stressed about? So basically, she looked at me, she saw a persona, she saw someone who looked confident, looked healthy, looked happy, and made a decision and then verbalized it to me. Like, not just like, oh, what do you have to be stressed about? I'm interested in you, but accusatory. What do
And
you
I'm
have to be
sorry,
stressed about?
but also an insult. Like, who in this world hasn't experienced adversity? And like, you're just like some fluffy, flitty little
I
person
love
going through
I
life
love how
without
you
having
come
to
to
work
my
at anything.
defense.
The first time you told me that story, I'm pretty sure my jaw dropped to the ground in the
Oh,
office.
you were
I
so
couldn't
mad.
believe
Yeah.
anybody not only say it to you, but to anybody, because that just shows what's that old adage, like comparison is the thief of joy. So that woman was already comparing herself to you to begin with, in
Right.
a way that she was looking down on herself, putting you on a pedestal, but
Mm-hmm.
taking away the things that make you human, right? The things that make you Amy beyond this, what, up to 2 to 4 hours, or training
Yeah.
that long.
Yeah.
Like, how rude. But also, like,
Well,
it just shows what she thinks of herself too, and that she's putting
see,
herself
that
above
is
others.
exactly. That's what now I can look back on that and say, oh, this is what she thought about herself.
Yeah, you
At
give
the
her a lot of
time,
grace when we talk about this story.
yeah, well, I've had quite a few years to build some of that grace for her, right?
Mm-hmm.
But at the time, it wasn't even just like, well, I do have some things to be stressed about. My two older children were in the throes of heroin addiction. And if anyone knows anything about addiction, it it's crushing. It takes over your life. It's all you think about. It's you feel helpless and hopeless and and it's all my fault and you're going through a lot of different things, right? So I
And
was
it's
speechless.
unbiased, right? Addicts aren't just people who grew up with a terrible life.
Right.
Addicts, we're all products of our environments and different things that come at us. And I've never been
Yeah.
through addiction like that, but from what I've seen from others, like, it's not necessarily reflective. Happy, pretty people can be addicts. They can have
Yeah.
raised people who have fallen prey to addiction. And
Right.
so for her, to make a judgment and not a discernment on another person just shows,
Yeah.
A, she needed that training. There's a couple of other
Well,
diversity trainers
yeah,
I want
she
to refer
probably
her
did. But I think part of it too was that because the whole reason why I didn't wear my suffering on the outside is because I had recently read a book called This Is Not the Story You Think It Is, A Season of Unlikely Happiness by Laura Munson. And I'm not going to say a lot about the book. You should read it.
That's a
I mean,
beautiful title, A
it
Season
is
of Unlucky Happiness. Like,
unlikely
unlikely.
happiness. Yeah. And it's really interesting. And it was in her book that I first heard the quote, which is actually attributed to, let's see, I gotta, pain is inevitable, suffering is optional. And it's attributed to the Dalai Lama, Haruki Murakami, and M. Kathleen Casey. But I didn't know that when I read the book. And I'm sure she didn't actually say it in those words. But when I read that, suffering is optional, it was as if the heavens opened up, right? It was as if a weight was lifted. Now, understand, it's not like the pain went away, but a weight was lifted that, oh, I can still find happiness. I can make this choice, right? I can make a choice to not suffer. So, and I want to be clear too, I wasn't in denial, right? I simply chose not to suffer while supporting my kids. And also, I feel like because I chose not to suffer, I could support them while they were suffering much better because I wasn't in my own swirling vortex, right? Plus, our youngest, who he knew the situation, but he also did not need a mom who was suffering. Um, so I could love and show my love and my boundaries to my kids who, were suffering. Um, so
I think that's just reflective, the both your story and then the lesson of the book is, pain is inevitable. We're going to go through loss while we're here at Earth School, but the
I
suffering
love
piece
Earth
of it,
School.
right? Earth
Yeah.
School. But so suffering, that's just reflective of to me that emotions, how we're taught, and if we're even taught, how we come to
Oh,
understand emotions, right? Because most people aren't taught emotional intelligence. It's something you kind of learn and you pick up on around you, and that's why we all react and experience things so differently. But kind of, at least in the United States, the stereotypical way is to view emotions as like a hierarchy or steps, that I'm angry, I'm in pain, I'm sad, I'm grief, and then working your way up to joy and happiness at the top. That's false. Most emotion tools and resources to kind of help you describe your emotions show up as a wheel. And so kind of like a color wheel, if you think of like red and green being complementary colors, there's going to be complementary emotions, but our emotions don't happen one and then the other. They can overlap. You can be in immense grief and have a huge loss upon you and still giggle with a baby, right? And
yes.
experience that joy and that happiness. And it doesn't mean you're not sad. It doesn't mean
It's
that you didn't lose something.
100%. And
Yeah.
in fact, it's so funny because I in the show notes, I've got a note later on. We'll go over it. Never mind. I'm not going to say it now. But I'm so glad you brought that up because it is not. First, I'm going to feel this, then I'm going to feel this. Well, now I no longer feel that. It's just that's ridiculous. We are layered, nuanced human beings,
And
right?
those, 7 stages of grief, those also don't go in an order.
Right.
You
They
bounce
can go back
between
and
them.
forth. Yeah.
And you can revisit emotions too. And so this concept
Yes.
of, if someone is expressing happiness and joy, then they are not feeling pain or have not felt pain is utterly
Mhm.
ridiculous and just takes away, the nuances of being a person, right? And
Exactly.
it shows kind of a tunnel vision, of people who might, like I said, judge you based on your appearance versus look at you as a multifaceted individual.
Yeah.
I'm curious, how did you react in the moment to that woman?
I
Can
wish
you
I could
share your
say,
story?
honestly, I wish I could say, like, oh, I reacted with, oh, that's interesting that you feel that way. This is how I reacted. My mouth hung open. And then I think I might have said, I'm surprised that you would say that to me. But I
That's a
I
very thoughtful response. I don't know. I would have been dumbstruck. I
honestly, it's like I've blocked it out of my memory. And I think I like turned to my table mates to get some kind of
support.
backup from them. And I think they all were kind of looking at her like, you said that. You just said that to someone. Like, I don't know. So, rule number one, don't ever think that someone else, and never verbalize it like, oh, what do you have to be sad about? No, I don't care who you are. I don't care if I was going to try and come up with some celebrity name, but for sure they have things to be sad about. So,
But it's one of those things of you're comparing and weighing somebody else's emotional experience or just experience in life in general to your own. So
yes.
even if you weren't super happy, a person like that is already looking at their life and being worse than them. And so that means I should get XYZ, or that's why I act this way, or I'm in
Mhm.
this and that's why I can't be this. And so that's why I loved the concept of happiness warrior when you first pitched it to me, because it's so demonstrative that joy is a choice, right? That it's just it's that action oriented verbiage of like, I'm going to be a happiness warrior. I wasn't born as some,
Mhm.
happiness fairy. Like, I am taking an effort
Right.
to do this. And there's a reason why. It's not
Yes.
just to be happy, it's not to avoid the pain, right? It's so much more than that.
Yeah. I mean, I think that a lot of the, so I'm glad you brought up like just kind of what you think about happiness warrior and the action orientation of it, because it's you're not born a happiness fairy. I mean, who knows, maybe some people are, but so to put the word warrior on it means that sometimes it's hard work to display that happiness, and certainly not in a fake way, but sometimes it's because you want to give that to other people as
Mm,
well, right? But okay, so say you don't, like, say there's nothing, like you don't have anything to suffer about, right? But say you just don't feel happy, or you're like, why, I'm not sure what I'm feeling. The whole thing with the happiness warrior as well is that it's not just happy. Hap- Happiness warrior acknowledge all feelings, right? All feelings are welcome, right? So it's allowing the feeling. So let's say you wake up and you're feeling crabby, or you're just feeling down, or you're feeling whatever. So ask yourself, what am I feeling? Because a lot of the times we never stop to say, what is this thing that I'm feeling, right? What am I feeling? And then maybe go deeper. Either what else am I feeling, or what am I really feeling?
and then might I suggest feeling your feelings?
Feeling, we love that. I think that should be one of our taglines,
Yeah,
right? Brightly, where you feel your feelings. And then the next question is, so feel your feelings. Yep, I think we need to add that in there. Acknowledge, allow, what am I feeling? What am I really feeling? Okay, I'm going to feel that. Like, sink into it.
It feels like forever. It really
Yeah.
does, especially if it's a bad feeling or an awkward
Oh,
feeling. My
yeah.
biggest one is like embarrassment or shame or guilt. And it
Oh,
feels like forever. But honestly, if you just do it for like 1 to 3 minutes, it passes. And then that the memory that's associated with that feeling, it kind of breaks that link, and you can have the memory
yeah.
without having the feeling, or you can get done what you need to get done, have the hard conversation, have the introspection without the feelings getting in the way, right? Like, it's not about
Yeah.
controlling your feelings, it's about allowing them so that you can move through that spectrum that we're talking about. Because honestly, like, baseline contentment is my goal, right? Like, I don't want to be 100% happy all the time, and I don't want to be
Hmm.
suffering all the time.
Hmm.
I not want to feel controlled by my emotions.
Yeah. And I think if you don't allow the feelings, then you are going to be controlled by them, right?
You're gonna react to your own emotions and other
Yeah.
people's so much more,
Yeah.
right? Like, you don't want to be in a reactive state. You want to be able to live with that intentionality we're always talking about.
So if you can't let the feeling go, then I think the next step is to just seriously ask yourself, what's my commitment to this feeling? Am
Mm,
I committed to this embarrassment? And
mm.
I think when you ask that question, it sort of gets you to go, now hold on, I don't want to be committed to that feeling. Like, why am
I love
I
that.
like giving it a ring, right? Like, let's just back off of that. We're going too fast here. Embarrassment.
Yeah, no, no, I don't want to go steady. I want to see
Yeah.
other emotions.
Yeah. And so, right, you don't want to be attached to that feeling. And
Yeah.
that's that whole thing of just like, it's almost like a circle, but then it sort of goes off then.
So
It's
that
like an orbit.
an
And then
orbit, your
but
satellite.
then it transits off.
Well, so I feel like we've talked about shadow work. We have a whole episode on shadow work, one of our earlier ones, so definitely check that out. But something that came to mind when you were asking, how committed are you to this feeling?
Yeah.
When you first shared with me personally that concept, I was thinking, like, how committed am I to joy? How committed am I to happiness?
But
I
that
love
is the other
questioning.
side of that.
Yeah. But so
Yes.
with the questioning of it, my project management mind, my like continuous improvement mind on my work stuff wants to implement that Toyota 7 whys. So, like, I'm feeling embarrassed. Why am I feeling embarrassed?
Yes.
And then, well, why is that embarrassing? Or why does that blah, blah, blah? And just getting to the root cause. Because so often we immediately label events or situations or just anything in life. Everybody thinks they know the root cause. But when you really
Mhm.
boil down to it, like maybe that embarrassing feeling from or that rage you're feeling at a boyfriend or a sadness or grief you're feeling, maybe there's something else deeper embedded there. Because if we can use your story as an example, I would imagine at first you're just grieving and you're scared for your kids. But then also, it sounds like there was some guilt there too, right? Like,
Mhm.
you were kind of reflecting on yourself as a parent. You've shared with me, oh my God, how did two of my children go through
Mhm.
this? And I hope that through your journey you were able to recognize, how it's not your fault, but that, and
Well,
because you've talked about
that's still
addiction,
a work in
still work
progress.
in progress. But I feel like, once you get through those surface emotions, like you said, the what am I
Mm.
feeling, and then getting to the why am I really feeling it, like those 7 whys, like just asking why, and then whatever that answer is, just ask why again, and then whatever that answer is, until you
Yeah.
get to like that natural kind of end root cause
That
place.
7 whys is has helped me out in so many different aspects of my life. And I can't believe I forgot about that when it came to this. And it's so funny because I know that when some people hear that, what is it, Toyota, um, what did you call it?
I think there's a gentleman, I believe it's at Toyota. There's a lot of Japanese companies that are
Yes.
really good
Yes.
at continuous improvement. And so that's
Yes.
where I've picked it up.
So the 7 whys though, and maybe we should do a show on some of those,
On continuous improvement, yeah.
on continuous improvement, because a lot of the things that you can use for companies for business actually work wonderfully for your life as
Mhm.
well. What something triggered something in my head, and now I
You
lost
said the
it.
7 whys have helped you so much personally too. Did a story come to mind with that?
No, it was something before that. And I wish, oh, I know. I just wanted to let everyone know that, first of all, the story that I told was from years ago, and that my daughter has been clean and sober for, gosh, 9 years, 8 years, 9 years. And my next oldest child, my son, has been sober for almost 19 months. So his has been a little bit more of an up and down journey. But this is really going well right now. So just wanted to let everyone know that before we
Well,
move
thank you for
on.
sharing. I know you've shared it in the past, but it's
Mhm.
especially your story of the woman in the training. That's just so illustrative of to me of how to show each other grace, right? Like I don't think you when I picture you, I don't think of you as ever being somebody who might say that to somebody else. But
Right.
like that's such a great example of words matter, right? And are you putting yourself at the center of like a group community experience like that,
Mhm.
and how can we take ourselves out of that and just
Yeah.
participate in the group
And
instead?
it's sort of, it definitely goes back to the, and I can't remember the quote verbatim, but it's like, you don't know what someone else is going through. So
Everyone is fighting their own battles.
exactly.
And also, just because it, just because somebody else has it worse doesn't lessen the emotional impact you're experiencing, right? So we are in a society, and especially I hear this a lot, and I've experienced it myself. But parents and adults, when it comes to teenagers and children, are like, "What are you so upset about? You don't know pain, or you don't know this." It's all relative, right? Like it's a
Right.
big deal in the world and in the life that that person is experiencing. And
Mhm.
so like I have a niece, and some people call, like when they were little, they would call them three-nagers, instead of the terrible twos. Oh, they're three-nagers, or oh, she's already a teenager, or oh, she's just emotional. And so I just like to talk to her and tell her, like, you have big emotions. And that's why I love you, because when you are happy, like you are the brightest, shiniest little star ever. But that also means when you're sad or when you're angry, that's also really big too. Or when you're sad or embarrassed or impacted, like you just feel things really bigly. And I don't want you to ever lose that or think of it as a negative trait, right? Like, let's
Yeah.
allow people to feel their feelings. Don't mask it. Like,
I mean, for heaven's sakes, so many adults right now are working through like shadow work just to freaking feel their feelings because they were told not to feel those feelings when they were younger.
so they've been talking, IQ, your intelligence level was always thought
Mhm.
to be a predictor of success. And then recently they've been saying in the past 10, 20 years, no, it's not the geeks from high school that are ruling the world. It's the popular kids because they know how to talk to people, right? And so they've been talking a lot about how EQ, or emotional intelligence,
Mhm.
is the way to go, right? And
Yeah.
then our organization is trying to train leaders in that too. And it's really, really hard. And that's why, it bums me out, because I've been in trainings at the same place with other supervisors, and we're talking about these big concepts and trying to be more intentional and trying to manage others. And there are these people with these blocks in their heads of like, no, they just got to do this, or no, this is just
Blocks
how it
in
is.
their heads.
Just
They do. They have great big
great
blocks,
big
these
blocks.
boulders.
And then I wish the trainings were more about helping those people overcome them, because that's how you're going to become a better leader. It's not a checklist of things to follow, right? Like you're managing
Mhm.
people, you're working with people. People have emotions, people have
Yeah.
experiences.
Do you think that can be trained, emotional intelligence?
Absolutely. I
Okay.
think it's not so much about training as it is about awareness, right? So you're teaching people what exists, this spectrum, how to recognize it in
Yeah.
yourself,
Yeah.
how to be intentional instead of reactive, how to allow things.
Mhm.
And then I think once you get through that self-reflection, you start to be able to do that with others. And that's the piece that needs to be more trainable depending on the environment you're in.
I could see that being successful because if you can do it to yourself, because I think we're all, interested in, oh, that's in me. Well, then if it's in me, then maybe then I can turn it outwards. Like if they can acknowledge it or see it in themselves, I could
Yeah.
see that. You know what? I wanted to go back to one thing that you said before when you were talking about you might think you don't have it as bad as other people have it. And something that I just read the other day, and I never thought of it. We talk about gaslighting a lot, but
Mhm.
this was about gaslighting yourself. And that's one of the things that we do to ourselves. And we're actually gaslighting ourselves, where we're like, well, I don't have it as bad as they do. Oh, it's not that bad. Oh, this, oh, that. Um, and I think that if you gaslight yourself, then you're never going to acknowledge those feelings that you're actually feelings.
And I've heard a lot of people on social media, I don't know if it's quite a research concept yet, but a lot of people say that those thoughts are that parental thoughts. So this isn't mom
Yes.
or dad doing bad things, but there are times in your life as a small child, teenager, and
Mm-hmm.
even young adult and adult where you're told to minimize, right? Like how many
Mm-hmm.
parents are embarrassed at a big function because their kid did something they weren't supposed to, or because they're,
Yeah.
and they're like, shh, don't do that. And I am trying to be more conscious myself around kids of just being in the moment, right? Not being worried about like what the people around me are going to be thinking about us, but experiencing the moment and like allowing people to be them. Um, but yeah, that gaslighting, you're minimizing your own feelings. I heard somebody say, like, for me, like, let's say I'm in line or I'm in my car and somebody does something and I have a judgmental thought, or I have like a minimizing thought or just something, and then I correct it. And I'm like, no, that's mean, or oh, that person, like give them grace, or oh, this or that. That first thought is what you were taught, right? Like it's or some what you've picked up through how you've been treated. So again, not necessarily your birth family, but every
Mm-hmm.
experience you've had. But the second thought is you, right? Like that is your
Oh.
choice. That is what you're learning and that's what you're becoming. So I'm trying to, when I have those type of thoughts, both to myself, right? Like that's nobody is shaming or embarrassing me in my life. I'm a grown woman, right? Like anytime I'm feeling shame or embarrassed, I'm judging myself for whatever I did, right?
Yeah.
Like, and
Unless you're in a training with that one woman.
well, yeah, having the spotlight on you is slightly different, but yeah, in one-on-one personal, interpersonal interactions. But
Right.
no, so to go
Right.
back to like the EQ, the emotional intelligence thing, it
Yeah.
comes down to being able to communicate your emotions, which means you have to have that self-awareness and understanding of it. I would love our schools to have happiness warrior trainings or just something else where instead of teaching, to these standards that aren't actually standardized everywhere and these things that don't matter. So many people are like, nobody taught me how to do taxes. Nobody taught me how to balance my checkbook. Nobody taught me this. Like, I want to see some real world functional things like that, but then
Yeah.
also recognizing, labeling, communicating feelings and needs and boundaries, right?
Yep.
And I brought this up with other people in my life, and some people hate it. And I'm like, why? And they're like, we teach
Why?
that in the home. And I was like, I have met you. I am concerned. Like, you've grown a lot as a person in the time I've known you, but like you could have started there at 10, right? And like imagine if we were all kind of taught very similar base knowledge about the spectrum of, or even the wheel of emotions. How many people just think
Yeah.
there's like 5 or 6 emotions and not understanding like how they relate to each other? And like you said earlier, the layers to them. But
Right.
so going back to what you're talking about, so you were saying happiness warriors feel their feelings, right? Is
Yeah.
another key component of that. So you're feeling it, then what do you do
You're
with it?
yeah, you're feeling it. Then you're actually, after you've asked what am I feeling, then you're feeling it, and then the commitment to the feeling, but you're not attached to it. You don't, like I said, you don't attach to it. So if you're at a point, uh basically, oh, let me back, okay, breaks, back up, start over. Okay, acknowledge the feeling,
Mhm.
allow the feeling, feel the feeling, right? If you have to, ask, what am I feeling? What am I really feeling? And then what's my commitment to this feeling? And then I think we need to add on, what's my commitment to feeling better? And like you said, Tracy, you want contentment. Like you don't have to be like, whoa. So feeling better is like, it's just a step up, right?
Mhm.
So what's my commitment? What could I do to feel better?
What's my desired end state? So in this
Yeah.
moment, by the end
Yeah.
of the week, month, for my year, for my life, right? Like
Right.
how I don't think enough people think like that because they just don't want to feel pain, right? They don't want to feel the unpleasant things, but are they really consciously choosing what they want to feel? And it sounds like that's what the happiness warrior is really about.
Yeah, because I think for people who don't want to feel their feelings, they still actually have the pain or the feelings, but they're just layering other stuff on top of it, right? Oh, let's go on Facebook or Instagram or, Netflix or
Distraction.
yeah, distractions. And we've talked about this before. Gosh, how about just some quiet and sit with yourself for a while? I know
And
it can be uncomfortable.
from personal experience, how rooted have you let yourself become in certain emotions? And how have you let that dictate your story, your sense of self, who you are? So I went through, or I like to do these Kundalini yoga meditation workshops. And so the ones that I like to do the most are kind of week-long events. And so every day you kind of do a different meditation, guided meditation, with Kundalini Kriyas and mudras and things like that. And, there's one on manifesting. There's one on kind of, she calls it illumination. It's done around the winter solstice. So it's kind of like digging deep and planting seeds. But there's one on self-love. And I always say I have immense self-love, right? Like nobody takes care of me like me. Like I make sure I'm okay. But I did it because I love this instructor, and I was like, I wanted to take as many offerings of hers as I could. And so we started it, and she had like an online portal to connect with other people doing it at the same time. And everybody in the comments for the first 3 days was talking about how much they were crying, how sad they were, how off they felt, all this grief and sadness that was coming out of them, all these quote unquote negative emotions, right?
Mm-hmm.
I was feeling so unbelievably good. I didn't talk in the chat. I didn't reach out
No.
to anybody. I didn't try and connect. I was like you were at the start of this episode. Like I was feeling reborn. I was bright and shiny. And so finally, like day 4, I'm like, okay, not to brag, but this is what I'm going through. Am I doing it wrong?
Okay, I love it how you immediately were like, am I doing it wrong? Because I feel really good.
But also, well, because with Kundalini too, you're activating energy.
Right,
Some people are kind of
right.
afraid of it. So it's like, am I gonna fall? Like, am I gonna like drop off into the grief? Because these are pretty big emotions everybody's experiencing.
Yeah.
And Nicole Nardoni, who's the instructor, I absolutely love her. She said something that has stayed with me now. This is like 4 or 5 years later, and I still think about it and try and work on it. But she said, Tracy, most people don't allow themselves to feel sadness, to feel grief, to feel anger. And so, what these things that we're doing are to release emotions, right? To release all this stuff. She goes,
Mm.
from what I know of you, our one on one sessions, what you're going through, I don't think you allow yourself to feel happiness or joy. And so, that is what is coming out of you.
Mic drop.
I felt so attacked, so seen. And then suddenly,
Yeah.
like 2 days later, I was in the sad place other people were doing. Like we did this one thing and it was like, I don't want to go back to that place. She's like, yeah, don't do that meditation anymore. Skip a day ahead. Like go back to the happy place. But it's just more my natural inclination for whatever reason to spend more time at the other end of the spectrum, or to allow
Mhm.
myself to be more rooted in the depression, in the sadness, in the, not necessarily things are so bad and I pity myself, but not allowing joy and happiness. And so since I've been able to do some shadow work and figure out why, but when I do experience happiness and joy, because it's so infrequent, it feels fake or it feels foreign, or I wonder if I'm too much, right? Because I don't have the experience just letting it come out freely, which is, I have to
Yeah.
imagine the experience that a woman in that training had with you, where like, here's this person who's just so unbridled with this emotion that she doesn't even know how to recognize or express. So
Yeah.
for me, I can definitely say like I felt joy, contentment, and happiness all throughout my life. I have tons of pleasant memories, but did I allow myself to express it, live in it, and feel it? And so this whole warrior concept just goes back to that whole, well, it's a choice, right? And for me, because it feels foreign or because it doesn't feel natural or I haven't been doing it, is a lot of work. right? And nobody thinks
It
of
takes a lot
happiness.
of work to be a warrior.
It wow, dang. That's helpful. I was just gonna say, how many people think of happiness and joy and associate it with work, right? Like, but for
Yeah.
some people, it is like it is that conscious choice, and it is something that I might have to look to other people to see, like how they express it, right? And try that on for
Yeah.
me as a choice, right? There isn't any one way to do it. Because for me, it's about unmasking and allowing the happiness and joy to come through and then staying there.
So I think thank you so much for sharing that. And it made me think about the other aspect of that, that in order for other people who maybe have a harder time of sitting in their grief or
Mhm.
pain, that you actually have to experience those feelings as well. And so I just want to be 100% um, honest here and say, absolutely. Would I, sob and cry and feel grief? Yes, I felt it. I got in it, but I didn't have a long, drawn out suffering with it.
And I
But
wonder if that's why she had a problem with it, or just didn't see it as a flip side, because since you've done the work on both sides, you have the most genuine expressions of happiness, joy, excitement, right? Like you just seem like a very genuine, authentic person. You're not masking. And I have to wonder if maybe that's why she felt like, well, you're just have this charmed life, right? Because
oh,
but
yeah,
you've done the work on both ends, and that's what allows genuineness to come through.
maybe I thank you for that. That might be why. I don't know, but I still want people to know that it's not like, just wake up and I sprinkle the fairy dust on, right?
Yeah, I mean, in
Yeah.
addition to feel your feelings, I wonder if her other new tagline is just being a human is hard. It's hard work. I don't want to do it
Takes a
sometimes.
lot. It takes a lot of work. It does. It takes a lot of
And
work.
I think the challenge we see is successful people make it look easy because you don't see the struggle.
Right? And that's in all aspects of life.
Yeah. It's not
All
even
aspects
about
of
the
life.
Instagrammers and the social media stars
Mhm.
just only showing certain aspects of their life.
Mhm.
I think it's just because when you see people doing well and having good things,
Mhm.
you see it, one, as unattainable, and two, as it was just given, right? Like it just
Right.
that's just them. That's just who they are.
Yeah.
But there's so much, it's like that iceberg analogy, right? Like we're only seeing just the smallest amount of the iceberg above the surface pre-climate change.
Oh my God. We'll
There's a
have a
whole
different
bunch
episode.
supposedly, but a couple
Yeah.
hundred
Yeah.
years ago it was really big underneath. It took down a boat, like a ship. So okay, so you brought up, I loved it. So happiness warrior. It's a fun concept. It seems, Xena Yaya or ay, whatever she said, but like it's work to be a warrior, right?
Yeah.
Like they didn't
Yeah.
just come out of the gate and ready to go. They train
Yeah.
like hell to do it and then fight like hell why they are being a warrior. So how do you do
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
it?
Um, you know, I was thinking about that a lot. And one thing that I just want to share as well is that I have an image in my head of my persona as a happiness warrior, right? Sword, big long sword. I am not
You have
dressed in
wings? I
pink.
picture like big
Yeah,
old angel
no.
wings.
Oh, well, now I'm going to
Now you
have
do.
wings. I didn't before. I am dressed in black. So no pink, no glitter, even though I love pink and glitter. Great big sword. And then did you ever watch Firefly?
Yeah, I watched Firefly.
Okay, you know the one River,
Yes.
and she
Oh,
can
she's
do
got
this.
that stance.
Yeah, she's got that stance that I'm trying to duplicate if you're not watching on YouTube.
She's the actress is a former ballerina, so it's a really deep lunge squat, but then she has her arms out in like a power pose, kind of like a bow
And
and
I think
arrow,
she
a
does have a
non-existent bow and
sword
arrow.
or something. So,
Yeah, she
anyways, and
might.
then I see myself with like a wicked smile on my face
Wicked.
and this sword. And the sword is just like to cut through the crap to get to the essence of what you want to feel, right? So that's like the image in my head. Now, like people are like, okay, fine. How do you not suffer? Right? What's that? How do you not suffer? So just like we said before, sometimes you do have to suffer, right? Sometimes you just feel that. You feel the suffering, feel the pain,
You
right?
don't live in it.
No, you do
Find a
not buy a
natural
condo there,
I
right?
love it. You find a natural way and
Yeah.
place to let it go.
Yeah. So the other thing is it's not denial for me many times. Like it's not suffering, but the pain, it's more duality. And you kind of brought this up earlier. Like I can be in pain and find joy and appreciate a sunset. So there's an and in there,
Mhm.
right? It's very, very important. Sometimes I think of myself as walking beside my pain. So it's there, it's with me, but it's not controlling me. I
Mm.
don't forget about it completely. I walk beside it. Um, I know that sounds weird, but it's just that's me. Write it out. Sometimes if you just journal, you get it
Mm.
from your brain, your heart, down your arm, onto the paper. That can help.
And then
Um,
what do you do with it? I grew up with sisters, and I know at least one of them listens to this, but due to the behaviors of one of you, I I live alone in my own house with lots of locks and keys, nooks and crannies, devices with passwords nobody else knows, and I still
mhm.
can't journal fully openly without burning it because I feel like someone's gonna read it.
Okay, Tracy, I'm with you 100%. Um, there are times that I have written things and then they just live in that journal. But, I'll say after my mom died, she had a lot of journals and I read some of her journals and nothing was life shattering.
Hey,
Nothing.
when I die, fine, free reign, read what you find. I might be a genius. You might
Oh,
publish.
you're worried about people reading it while you're still alive.
Yeah.
Then burn it.
Yeah, burn
Who
it.
cares?
Yeah.
Burn it. Write it out and
It
burn
does
it.
you no
Make a
good to keep it
ritual out of
inside.
it.
I can tell you that from experience. No good to keep it inside, so find a place to burn it.
Yeah.
They sell mini cauldrons on Etsy for anybody who lives in an apartment.
I need a mini cauldron. I
Or
tell
even
you
just I
what.
mean, you can burn it in your cast iron, whatever, but
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
cauldron you feel like you're doing
So
a tiny spell in a tiny cauldron.
in a tiny house. Send the energy of suffering into something else. So, what I mean by that is
It
if
sounds like the start of a horror movie. Not to take away from these beautiful gifts you're
no,
giving us,
no, seriously,
but I just
let's
picture
write
this
one.
cursed object in your home where you're deriving your happiness from by giving your suffering to like this old, teddy bear.
So, so it could be something where the energy of it you go and do something else, right? So maybe you garden, but it also could
Ooh.
be something like what you were talking about. Like, okay, say you people are going to be like, okay, that's it, they've lost it now. But
I'm
like an empty jar, right? So you've got an empty jar. Scream into that jar.
do it.
Scream into it, bottle it up, bury it in your backyard. How's that for doing something?
One of those workshops I do, she has you, and a lot of workshops like this do it, but you blow it into a stone, right? And then you
Love
go
it.
and you get rid of the stones. But then you also take stones that you love and you bless them with the things that you want and you
Okay,
really
I like that
want.
better than burying it in your backyard because that might bite you in the butt in like
Sometimes
10 years.
Well, but it's also, do what you can with what you have. So, like,
Right.
sometimes I'll walk
Yeah.
into the woods and do stuff there. There was ones I put some stuff in the sewer because it's like, well, I don't want you in my yard because I'll know you're there, even if it doesn't matter energetically, because you're releasing it, right? It's released,
Right.
you know.
Right.
But then I saw a sewer grate and there were just some pebbles, and it was like, oh, in you go. Bye. But
With
one
the
of the things,
raccoons.
if you're really good with imagery and maybe you're not into some of the more magical stuff that we like to the fairies and all that we've talked about, if this is your first episode, you have no idea.
It's just going to get worse from here on in.
But if you're a listener, you know. But one of the things that I like to do, I used to have a therapist who is really somatic. Where are you feeling your feelings in your body? And I hated it because every single time it was my chest. I was like, you don't even have to ask, right? Like, just stop asking. I feel all this energy here. It's where everybody feels it. And he's like, no, it's
No,
not.
it's not.
So
I feel mine in my solar plexus.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So mine is always right here. And it's a
Okay.
lot tied with like anger, anxiety, and grief and stuff like that. And so I was like, okay, like I'm doing really good at feeling my feelings, but it's still here. Or like sometimes, I feel like I'm eating my words. Like I don't let my words out, or I don't say what I'm thinking to people, or like I was saying, I don't feel like I could journal at the time, stuff like that.
That's your throat chakra, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I have issues with that. But
Okay.
yeah, I
Okay.
feel it in my throat and like my lungs area. So definitely throat chakra area. But so I was like, okay, I just need to release it. And so I started picturing something from Fireflies. That's our Firefly episode.
I love it.
There's like some sort of scene in a lot of space movies or in that where like they open up the ship doors and let all this fire out, right? Like there's a fire in the ship, and because there's no oxygen out there and there's oxygen there, you put all the crew where there is air, lock everything up, and then you open the main doors and it sucks the fire out, right? So now, and I don't have to do it anymore, but at the time it was really helpful. I would just picture like, if I have all this emotion here, I'm just opening up and I'm letting it out into the ether, into the cosmos, into the universe. It's getting burned up out there, and then I shut it and I'm better and I'm fine, and I can feel myself, like you were saying, more consciously.
I love that so much. And now I'm going to be opening the ship doors for so many different reasons.
Oh, and you just let it out. And like maybe space, like I really resonate when I meditate, and when people have done Reiki healing on me, or just other healing, or I've been with other, like more magical practitioners and stuff. Everybody, even unprompted, talks about like, we're in the cosmos. And I was like, yeah, that's where I hang out. Like I need to be grounded. Like I'm just always just in space. That's not always what it's going to resonate with people. You can picture yourself being a fire burning dragon, like Khaleesi. You can, picture whatever you want. Like it's your meditative space. So like, how do you want to release it in your mind, in your mind's eye, in a way that will make you feel like it's gone? Because it is, we store trauma in our bodies, right? Like there's a book, The Body Keeps the Score. Highly recommend it.
Yeah.
There's a lot of practical tips and things. That's a whole different episode on its own. But I personally think I have a very clear mind's eye meditation. When I read, I see pictures like a TV. When I have memories, I'm like playing a film, right? Like I trust my memory more than other people's, because I learned other people don't think that way. They don't retrieve their memories like they're watching a TV show.
They don't?
Not everybody does. No, there's a whole lot. That's a whole nother episode. Everybody thinking different. Some people don't have a voice in their head. Some people have a voice in their head but think that they're crazy and don't realize everybody that's them, right? Like there have people that have gone to therapists thinking that that they're crazy. But so for me, if you do really good with imagery like that, I recommend that. That also hypnosis. If you have a really good imagination, you're more likely to have better outcomes if you do hypnosis. And I do it with trained mental health therapists that are trained in it. I'm not saying
thank you for saying that.
Like a chicken, like no, like these are the people with licenses who have gone on for very expensive, very hard credentialing. Because I looked into it and I was like, oh, not really. But so there's many different things you can do to kind of release it. But you have to. It's energy, right? Our emotions are actually energy. It's why angry people are hot-headed and violent, and we got to get that energy out.
Yeah, I think that's so important to remember. And I know that we kind of talked about going outside. That's another great thing. Take a walk. So not only releasing your feelings into something, but also think about when you were a kid and you had like that talisman, right? Favorite stuffed animal, whatever. Create a talisman for yourself that just sort of helps you feel better. So maybe not necessarily this is a way to release things, but maybe it's to feel better. So maybe it's like
stones
a crystal, right? I've got my little worry balls, those I can't remember what they're called. And then I don't know if you remember, I also use essential oils. So honestly, if I'm in a little bit of a funk, I seriously take a citrus oil and just smell it. But I made a blend of Happiness Warrior. There's my Happiness Warrior blend.
Those who aren't watching on YouTube, I just pulled out my bottle of Happiness Warrior that I've had her refill once for me.
Bring it with you.
I love it.
Bring it with
Oh
you
my
tomorrow.
God, I will. Oh, thank you
Okay.
for reminding me. It's almost empty. Okay.
It's basically it's orange essential oil, and then it's a blend. It's Valor, which has it's black spruce, camphor, frankincense, geranium, something else.
I have to say, I have a very strong sensitivity to fragrance.
Mhm.
It's a huge allergy of mine, and this one has not triggered me. You gave me my first bottle of Happiness Warrior for a housewarming gift.
Yeah.
And I ran around my empty house before moving in, spraying it everywhere, going, Happiness Warrior! Like, this is my house, my home. No one's energy but my own. I'm a Happiness Warrior. Like, and I just blessed my house with it. And it's part of my pre-show ritual is to spritz this around. That's why it was right here by my computer. Like,
I love it.
yeah.
I put it on. Yeah. And so we sort of talked about doing a ritual as well. Do a ritual. Gosh, burn something, do something like that. And then sometimes we're human beings, right? And sometimes you're just gonna suffer, and maybe you might suffer again. Ask for help, talk to someone, ask for help, or maybe even think about, could you do something to help someone else? I know that you've talked about that before, that brightens you up if you can do something for someone else.
It gets
So
you out
that's
of your
another
own
great way.
head. It really does.
Yeah. Yeah.
Going back to what did you say before do something for someone else? Oh, so it for asking for help. Let's say it's the middle of the night and you don't want to be a burden, right? First of all, you're not a burden. Talk to the people in your life. They love you. They like you. But like, let's say you're in a position or a place or you just don't feel like you can, or it doesn't feel safe. I think I've mentioned this in a prior episode. Just shout it to the universe, creator, God, your guides, whoever.
Yes.
Say, you know what? Like that verbalization of what you're going through and that you want it to end. Don't do everything in your head. Get it out, even if you're just screaming into the ether, right? Like just yelling into the nothingness. Before I had my own home, and even I know my neighbors kind of well now, so I don't know what they can hear. I'll go in my car while driving, and if it's safe, I'm not speeding, not a lot of people around to scare them, I will just scream in my car, like
it's
let it
so
out.
beneficial. It really is. And to add to that, you also could, if you're a praying person, you can pray for help.
Mm-hmm.
If maybe you're not a praying person, there's plenty of times I'm like, I really need some help here.
It's another way to give the burden of the grief or the pain or the suffering to something else, right?
Something else. But I will say that I feel like when I ask for help of my guides, angels, spirit, whatever you want to call it, God, when I ask for help, more than likely I receive it. Now, maybe it's not like bam, but all of a sudden something will not all of a sudden, but something might happen, something will shift. You feel a little bit of a shift. And like you said, it's getting it out of yourself, right?
Because sometimes too, even like, let's say I'm in my car and I have, or like I'm falling asleep and an embarrassing memory from 6th grade pops up. Right? Like instead of pushing that down or just being like, damn it, Tracy, like what, like I just stupid brain, I just want to go to bed. Like I don't want to feel this, or why'd you do that? Like instead I'll just be like, you can reparent yourself, right? So kind of, it's not necessarily shadow work. You don't have to picture your younger you. Just in that moment, you can be like, wow, that was really embarrassing. Like I'm just going to validate and affirm, like, holy crap, that sucked. Like, and that
love that.
but you're speaking it aloud, and it's just that release and that verbalization. And sometimes if you do that a couple of times, it's kind of similar to therapy, that it just doesn't hold weight anymore. And it works for sadness and grief too. Might take a little bit longer with some of the heavier things, but and also, and we've talked about this in prior episodes, if you don't feel like the people in your life can give you the support you need, whether you're surrounded by problem solvers or they don't see the whole picture of you, professional help. get what you can, talk to someone, even if it's just like a
Mhm.
hotline, I know, or a lot of employers offer those sorts of things. Talking to somebody else and just having somebody listen or give you validation releases it, right? I have a friend who I love. Like, I'll just text her and be like, "Can I vent?" And like even just yesterday, she called and she's like, "Do you have a minute to talk?" And I was like, "Yeah." And I know to just listen. And then sometimes there's a natural point in the conversation where it can be like, "Do you want, like, I have some ideas on this. Do you want help, right? Or do you want this? Or can I share this?" And so you just have to, prime the people in your life if they're not a high emotional intelligence yet, and be like, "I just need to get this out. Can you listen?"
Oh, that is great because you're stating this is what I need, and then this is what I need from you.
Hmm.
And I feel like that is, um, it's here it is. This is what it is. And the other person should be able to either say yes or no.
Hmm.
Hopefully it's a yes, right? So, I guess just kind of wrapping it up, I think we just want to make sure, can you sit with this? Like, not you, Tracy. And everyone just think about that pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional. And can you reflect on your feelings and your commitment both ways to those feelings?
Can you fight for happiness?
Ugh,
For yourself
right.
and for your community, for your kids, for, a better generation. Like, there's
So
just so many
important.
different things you could
Right.
be a happiness warrior for.
It benefits a lot of different things, right? Yeah, I
Yeah.
love that.
And I mean, not to steal your concept, but like this is something where, let's say you're not going through grief right now or pain, or you have processed emotions. Some people are already at a pretty good emotional place.
Yeah.
Good job.
Yeah.
Please share with us in the comments below how you did that. But think about what is the quote unquote war you're waging in life, and sometimes it's just defending against an unhappy life. Or for me, like I said, like just want to be content for the most part,
Yeah.
right? Like more often than not, want to be try and be a good person to myself and others. So like so that you're prepared when things do go bad, like you've already pre-trained, what the battle's going to be, what you're fighting for. And then you can also have an idea for, some of those proactive things we talk about of, connecting with other people, aggressive friendship,
Hmm.
things like that, like different ways that you can be a happiness warrior every day without even thinking about it. And it can
Yeah.
be, do you have an affirmation for it? For the happiness warrior?
Gosh,
Have you ever?
dang it.
Not to put you on the spot, but I'm just like thinking back to old episodes is all.
Isn't that funny?
You know what? It can be an Instagram post. So check out Instagram.
Yeah,
Be brightly.
honestly, I'm like, do I have an affirmation for it or have I just embodied it? But,
Let's
maybe I
make
do.
one.
Yeah,
Not you
I
have it right
will.
now,
You
but
bet I will. The universe was pretty spot on for our tarot cards this
really.
week. Yeah. So the first one is and I can't see what I'm doing here. So you have to tell me the 9 of Swords.
Yep.
So it's, yep, 9 swords, kind of like perpendicular on the wall above this person sitting up in bed.
Weep,
Obviously, yes, weeping.
sorrow, grief, just
Right. It's
he is
all the
not in a good
suffering,
place.
right? Worry, despair, self destructive criticism.
Mm,
And basically, it's also how much of your suffering is self inflicted, too. Ooh, that's a tough one,
mm.
right?
And
But
it's a very solitary card, right? Like,
yes, this person is alone and it looks like they have no one to turn
and
to.
it's a very dark card. There's no light in it, right? Like if you look at the
Hmm.
tarot, you can very clearly see when the sun is shining versus this. It's
Right,
a black background. I don't
right.
think many other cards have that.
Right, because I think this is depicting like waking up from a nightmare, right?
Mhm.
So what I want people to think of with this card, yeah, this is a card of suffering, right? So there's your choice. And I feel like also within this card, with those swords, yeah, you could take one of those swords and cut through it and then get to the other side,
Yeah, whenever
right?
I get that card in a personal drawing or reading, my immediate thought is, yeah, I know I'm doing this to myself. Like, just shut up. You don't have to remind me. Like, I'm aware. Give me the lovers already. Like, I just
Give me the lovers already.
where's my two of cups? Like,
Yeah. So actually 2 cards popped out and then a third card popped out. But the
okay.
second card that popped out is from the major arcana. So the first 22 cards in the deck, it's strength. It depicts a woman with the infinity symbol over her head. She is with a lion. She is very gentle with the lion. And basically, this card is kind of about intuitive understanding. She's and what I want people to remember is she's not battling the lion. So she's not a warrior in this photo. She's actually gentle with it, and it looks like she could walk with it, but she's also like petting it, and it almost looks like she's like saying, what's in your mouth?
And
But
I love that you're focusing on the person, because when I see that card, I focus on the animal. And the lion is
really,
the king of the jungle. He is strength, right? Like,
yeah,
he's physically dominant. He is powerful. He is strong. But he is allowing himself to be pet by this woman.
because this woman has emotional intelligence.
It's that physical, intuitive, and strength paired with the
Yeah.
emotional
And so
and strength.
what I get from this card then is accept your pain, your suffering, and then transmute it.
You have the power to do it, right? Like, you have
Mm-hmm.
the power inside yourself to get through anything. It doesn't feel like it, but
Yeah. In fact, you are the person who has the power. I know we ask other people for help, but you still are the person that is the deciding factor.
it is in you.
And then our friend, the Queen of Wands, showed up, and I believe so. The Queen of Wands is in her throne with the black kitten in front of her.
And the
She's got
sunflower.
yes, the sunflowers, and she even has lions by her
And the
as
chair,
well.
right?
Mm-hmm. And I believe the Queen of Wands showed up because my mom said, "Hey, haven't mentioned me lately in any shows. So, are you forgetting about me? Enough about your show. Let's talk about me." So, anyways, that's
Why does the
that's
Queen of Wands remind you of your mom?
so the Queen of Wands is actually depicted. I think she is Leo. I think she's a Leo.
Okay.
And because of the lions, and because she's a queen, and because there's a sunflower, and it's sort of like strength and happiness and mastery, which just remind me of my mom. And actually, when they talk about the Queen of Wands, they say it can depict a woman with lioness features. And my mother looked like a lion, a beautiful lion.
So the Queen of Wands, to me, so Wands associates with air, correct? For the
No,
element. No?
fire.
Fire. Oh, fire. Yeah. So
Mm-hmm.
it's that action oriented.
And my mother. Mm-hmm.
Love it.
Yes. Yes. So what's going on next week, Tracy?
The absolute flip side of this, Amy. So there's Happiness Warrior, and as I stated before, it is a genuine, authentic reflection of somebody with great emotional intelligence making choices and really feeling their feelings. The flip side of the Happiness Warrior that I think we see depicted so much on social media, or just what we assume in other people, is toxic positivity, right? So if you've ever woken up in a bad mood, had a headache, experiencing something bad in life, and you experience a happy person, there's nothing more irritating than that in that moment. And part of me, in my own reflection, has come to understand that that's because it seemed it was lacking the genuine authenticness. And when I'm in those darker, more irritable places, I'm less likely to deal with that kind of BS, right? I'm going to
Yeah.
see it for what it is, and it's going to be frustrating. And with a lot of people doing shadow work or becoming aware of shadow work or just, trying to manifest and all these things, there's this whole collection of people who are taking everything at its surface level and not doing the work, who are assuming that there's light without darkness, that there isn't the duality, that there isn't a balance, that there isn't everything in us. And it just comes out as
Formerly me.
I think we've all been socially conditioned to do it. It's that like, oh, you should smile. It's a beautiful day, or you don't have it so hard, or this or that. And it's so we're going to talk about not only how to avoid being it, but what to do when you experience it. So like you shared in your story earlier, you kind of look to the table around you, both for just validation that it just happened, but also kind of like, I was just emotionally wounded and attacked. Is anybody else gonna like come in for me while I recoup? Like I need a turn, I need a breath, I need something to kind of heal and figure out the best way to respond. And so it's kind of, how to be a happiness warrior in a sense of like a happiness warrior ambassador, right? Like how
I love it.
right? Like so you're being an ambassador for happiness without making people feel bad for feeling bad, right? Like this isn't about judging people for not expressing.
I just want to above making people feel bad for feeling bad.
It's a pandemic, and it's another pandemic we go through in life. I feel like that we just so often people think the goal is happiness, and it can be toxic to people, right? Because then people stop feeling their feelings, or they stop sharing and expressing their feelings.
Right.
And then
I got a lot to add to that next
and then generations below us don't learn that expression. So we're going to talk about the flip side of it.
Cool. Thanks. And hey, everyone, thanks for listening. And if this episode spoke to you or your soul, please share it with a friend. And if you have time, oh my goodness, give us some love on your preferred platform with a rate, review, and subscribe. You can also reach out to us via Instagram and YouTube under the Brightly Podcast, or via email at brightlypodcast@gmail.com.
And with that, we hope you have a bright and beautiful day. Thank you for listening.
Bye.